The following is a special video presentation of the Hennepin County Library.
Hi, welcome to a discussion with William Kotzwinkle. I'm Bruce Southworth, a mystery reviewer for New Mystery Magazine and Publishers Weekly. And Bill Kotzwinkle is a novelist, a short story writer, a children's author, a screenwriter, poet. He's written quite a variety of books. Probably among his better-known books are Dr. Rat, which won the World Fantasy Award, and Fan Man, and E.T., the Extraterrestrial. He is, I guess he's got the record there. It was the best-selling book of 1982. And an earlier novella, Swimmer in the Secret Sea, which is being reissued later in September of '94 by Chronicle Books. And his current book is The Game of 30, which is published by Houghton Mifflin this month, June 1994. So welcome. It's a great pleasure to have you here. It's a delight to meet you after reading some of your books. Let's start by talking about The Game of 30 itself. Maybe what we have is a replica of the ancient game here, and maybe you can kind of describe the origin of the idea for the book, and then maybe we can take a look at the game a little bit and kind of put the two together a little.
Yes, well, this is a reproduction of the ancient board, which I saw in 1984 in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Manhattan. I was in the Egyptian wing just prowling around, and I saw this ancient game board, beautiful wooden board, 2,000 years old, and it was haunting and mysterious and beautiful. And I kept it in the back of my mind, and when I started thinking about writing a mystery, I thought the game board, a labyrinth, the pursued and the pursuer, a perfect pattern for a mystery. And I'll set this mystery around this game board, which has meaningful squares. There are squares in this game that cause you to die. I thought, perfect. Mm-hmm. The dead man was playing the Game of 30 on the night he was murdered, and his piece had been in the lead. After he was murdered, the murderer took his piece and put it on the square called Rebirth, which means your piece dies and has to go back to the beginning. So it was obvious that the murderer also knew how to play the Game of 30. How many people around know how to play that game? So the mystery has begun.
Yeah, the mystery has indeed begun. Let's take a look at this a little bit more closely so people can kind of see that this is a fairly accurate reproduction of the
Yes,
of the
it
game?
is, but all of the squares are not known as they were in ancient Egypt. It's speculated what some of the other squares would be, but the ones we have, this is the square of rebirth, water. When your piece lands on this square, it's a penalty, because in ancient Egypt, if you landed on water in your daily life, a crocodile was liable to come and take part of your leg off. So water was not a favorable square.
Not a good place to be.
The person landing on this square has to go back and be reborn. That's what happened to the dead man. His piece was placed there, meaning he has to start all over again. Mm-hmm. Now, what was interesting about the Egyptians is that when they played this game, they didn't play it like we play Monopoly, just for kicks. They looked at it as oracular. So if you and I were playing someday and my piece landed on the penalty square of water, I would be careful around water for the rest of the day, because they felt the board was an oracle, that it could, the sages had built the board and the gods would speak through the game. It was a very serious game. Now this is the three musical instruments. It's harmony. It's a favorable square. If you and I landed on that, if I landed on that, it would mean a light-hearted day awaited me. This is, the three birds are the soul. So say you landed on that, you would have a soulful encounter before the day was out. The two men kneeling are kneeling in supplication, in obeisance to the king. I would try to be as humble as I could, which is never easy on a talk show, but I'll try my best.
And how about this?
This is the this life symbol, Ankh, the holy symbol. So this is another godly square. Mm-hmm. It would indicate a religious turning of your mind for the day.
I hope we're probably both here.
Yeah.
It sounds like a good place to be today.
Yeah, it's a good place to be.
Now, did the symbols along the side represent anything in particular?
Yes. Now here is the bird of death. You wouldn't want that one. This is the beetle. That's the Ra, the beetle of the sunrise, the golden light that radiates out of the beetle. A lovely square. And the others, the missing squares, there's Shu, the inquiring wind. McShane, my detective, lands on the square of Shu, the inquiring wind. The wind gets into things, blows them around, and will bring him some information. Just at that moment, a wind chime rattles over the head of somebody who he suddenly realizes, that is someone I should be questioning. The inquiring wind has already given me a clue.
And I recall at one point, too, he is talking to the daughter of the murdered man who hires him to find out who killed her father, and he lands on truth. And she tells him that everything you've heard today is the truth, or what you just heard was the truth.
Yes.
And so on. So presumably these would be in some of the other squares.
Yes, they would be.
Here.
I've made a board of my own that has as many of the other squares that I have uncovered. One of them is the goddess of beer. If you land on that square, you know what you do after work today.
That sounds good. That sounds, especially on a day like today when it's 92 degrees. The characters, let me set this up, maybe people can see better. The characters in the story are wonderful. I mean, they're like just reading about real people. Are they McShane and his sort of cohort, Ann Henderson, who's what I can kind of call a new age chiropractor, almost a quasi-Sherlockian, the way she seems to deduce things about people from their posture and so on. Are these real people that you've based the characters on?
Yes, Jimmy McShane is a combination of two detectives that I know. One runs the Pinkerton Risk Assessment Bureau. He'll tell American businessmen where it's risky to be on any day of the week should they want to know. And he knows all about security and high-tech devices, which Jimmy McShane, being a private eye for the 90s, has got tape recorders that can hear your heartbeat through a wall, and if you're wired with one of them, it gives off the signal of a computer watch, nothing more than that, so no one would even know that you're listening to them while you're standing right in front of them. He's got a pen that he carries in his pocket that sends a radio signal a half a mile. This is the way detectives work these days. They don't, like Sam Spade, make $4 an hour. They're billing $1 million a year because corporate espionage is high-paying stuff. So I have him as one of the characters, and I traveled around with a private eye from Maine, who was very much exactly the way I think of a private eye, as a guy who fits in anywhere. He's the man of no face whatsoever. We had to go to a convenience store, as it's called in Maine, a little general store. They're very suspicious in these stores. Now he, like my other friend, is a college graduate, a degree in criminal justice, an articulated, educated guy. When he walked into that store, he was a man from the country. You'd never know. You'd think he'd grown up on the farm. And I watched him do this over and over. Well, I kept my mouth shut all the time we were questioning people. One day, a woman who we were questioning looked at me and said, "Who's this guy, Dr. Watson?"
All of a sudden, an astute witness.
Yes. So that's who I am. I'm Dr. Watson.
You're Dr. Watson. And, well, that's kind of appropriate, as Doyle was essentially Watson for the Holmes character throughout the stories.
Exactly.
That's great. How about Saul Feldman? Now, we should probably explain. He starts out in the story, Jimmy McShane is a sort of a bodyguard protector of Saul Feldman, who's a diamond dealer in New York.
Yes.
And he's just a wonderful character. I don't know why, but I felt like he was Eeyore, almost.
Well, you know, Saul woke up that morning with a bad feeling. He says, "Today is the day I get popped. The omelet jumped out of the pan. It's on my shoe." I said, "Saul, when the omelet jumps out of the pan, it's time to pay attention to what might happen." And he calls Jimmy McShane. Saul is selling expensive merchandise. He needs someone to walk him to the car. He's afraid that if he uses his own stun gun, they will take it and they'll electrify my kishkas, he says. So he hires Jimmy McShane to take care of him. Saul's a good man.
He's absolutely delightful. Are there plans to develop these characters in future
Well, I
books?
was thinking that Saul, who's a little on the portly side, should go to a weight reducing farm in Maine. And the guy who runs the farm is murdered. And Saul is the prime suspect. And he has to call Jimmy to come and get him out of a jam. That's the next thing I've had in mind for a while.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet his wife, too. She's
Yes.
an environmentalist, he describes her.
Yes.
She's always saving things like strangler figs.
Yeah, strangler figs. And she makes him go down the rapids, and she makes him go into the Amazon jungle. And he said, "This is what I get for marrying an environmentalist. She should be on a golf cart in Westchester. Instead, she's in a canoe in Peru."
You've got a short section from the
Yes.
book selected to read. And now I'll let you set this up as to
Okay.
what's going on here.
Well, the beautiful woman has just appeared in McShane's office. You've got to have a beautiful woman in a detective novel. She's told that her father's been murdered, and she's left. And Henderson, the chiropractor, shares the basement offices with McShane. When she was gone, I returned to the waiting room. I was met by Dr. Ann Henderson, the chiropractor with whom I shared the basement offices. Well? Henderson was petite, auburn-haired, and had the best legs in Manhattan, in my prejudiced opinion. I'd been in love with her since we'd opened the offices. Well, what? So who is she? I saw her on the monitor. She's gorgeous, Jimmy. I feel she has a story. Henderson, you know my cases are confidential. Jimmy, I told you about my patient with the extra nipple. How could I refuse her? I took her into my office and we watched the video. Temple's father appeared on screen enjoying himself at his birthday party, a man who can't see death waiting for him. Henderson squinted toward the screen. He's very attractive, if you like the Klaus von Bülow type. I mean, the blazer and the ascot. My take was con man, with the same studied respectability the SNL bankers had. Tommy Rensler gestured to the camera. "It's a pleasure to have my nearest and dearest here on this inglorious occasion." He pointed to a cake glowing with candles. "At 60, a man is either a stoic or a satyr." "Now that's a strange thing to say," observed Henderson. Mrs. Helen Rensler came into the picture in an ivory satin evening gown, the bodice fastened with 3 bows that left several patches of bare skin at the midriff. "She's too old for that outfit," said Henderson. "Her self-image is distorted, and her right collarbone is low. I'd love to get an X-ray. She probably has a slight secondary scoliosis." "What's your take on Tommy?" "I'd say he's carrying chronic tension around C1. "He's permanently stiff, Henderson. It's too late for a neck adjustment. What about his character?" "He's got all that savoir-faire, and he's perfect for selling expensive artifacts. But there's something about him. For one thing, he's been cheating on his wife for years. That's obvious from her attitude. She's remote. She watches everything from a little distance. She's made other arrangements with her emotions, and they don't include her husband. Is she having an affair? Not in that dress. That dress was desperation, but I'm sure she's had affairs. I mean, why shouldn't she? Say she was having an affair. Say she wanted to get rid of Rensler. Could she have killed him? She was out of love with him, and maybe she even hated him. He had the kind of charm that could drive you crazy after a while because he was so conscious of it. She might kill him just to get him to stop being charming. How did he die? He was injected with venom from an Egyptian cobra. Cleopatra killed herself with one. I'd think about that if I were you. What do you mean? Well, it was done for love. Henderson got up and started to pace. You see how valuable my analysis can be, and I haven't even begun to think about the case. What I've always wanted to do is ride around in a surveillance van with earphones on. She caught my look and said, "Jimmy, we'd be very foolish to start getting serious about each other." Why? Because our chakras don't line up. Would you mind explaining that one? Your chakras have a very aggressive, erratic spin. Mine spin much more gently. We're not romantically compatible. But we'd still make a good detection team. Will we ride around in a van with earphones on?
It's wonderful. I think you've got some competition for Watson in Dr. Henderson. She's delightful. They're almost a sort of a modern-day Nick and Nora Charles in a way they banter back and forth.
Exactly.
It's just delightful. I want to also move on and talk about some of the other things that you've written, and the style and variety is just immense. I'm not exactly sure where to start with some of this, but let's start with how you became a writer. I read somewhere that it was there was a defining moment when you were with your father when you were young, and could you?
Yes. Well, the moment really was my father's father, who gave me a little fire engine for my 4th birthday. He was a fireman, so a fire engine was the right gift. I got into that thing and started pedaling it with my teddy bear in the back and my little dog Nippy beside me, and I started pedaling away, and I thought, I'm free, right out the back door and down the alleyway they went. He and Nippy and Mr. Bear inside the red fire engine. And when I was in my early 20s, one day still didn't know how to write, and I suddenly felt my grandfather's spirit and the fire bell ringing in my mind, the little fire bell that I rang, and I thought, the fire engine, let's get in the fire engine and start writing and make it a children's book. And that was my first book. So I felt it was a gift from the wind. Yeah, that was the defining moment.
You've suggested, or I remember reading an interview somewhere where since children's literature per se was begun with Treasure Island, that it's mostly been, what was the phrase you used? A river of trash, I think.
Yes.
Do you think it's improved, say, in the last 5-10 years at all, or is it still pretty much condescending and you know?
There are some writers who don't condescend, and they're the best kind. You know, when Stevenson wrote Treasure Island, there was no such thing as a children's book. He just wrote what delighted him, and it happened to delight everybody, including a lot of children. And when I write, I try and write on that level. Trouble in Bugland, which was my Sherlock Holmes, Dr. Watson mystery with bugs, with Inspector Mantis as Holmes and Dr. Hopper as Dr. Watson, is written with respect for children's minds.
We happen to have it here.
We have in it a lot of interesting facts, true facts about insects. Inspector Mantis says, "You have a sticky substance on your shoe, Doctor. It's a sign that the assassin bugs have been here." Well, it's a true thing about assassin bugs. Wherever they go, they leave a little sticky substance. This was the case of the disappearing butterfly. This Juliana butterfly is abducted. So there's flashy facts about insects in there. A kid can read it and learn about insects, have a good mystery on a level that's a good one. It doesn't talk down to him at all. I want to speak the language of children and help them be confident with themselves, not to feel an adult is telling them a story and showing them how they should be, but rather getting down there with them.
Do you approach writing an adult novel significantly differently than that? I mean, with the sort of imaginative, dreamlike quality of a lot of your novels, you know, you're just kind of getting into the head of a lot of people too.
Well, some of the things come calling for me. My next children's book is called The $1 Million Bear. I was watching television one morning on network TV, and they had the owners of the original teddy bear. It's worth $1 million. They keep it in a safe. I thought, what a thing to do to a teddy bear. We've got to liberate the teddy bear. So my book, The $1 Million Bear, is the liberation of the teddy bear from his safe. Something came calling for me. The teddy bear just came right out of the screen and called to me through the safe, "Get me out of here." And that's how I've written all my books. I feel that life is a mystery. I think it's a mystery that I didn't dissolve in the shower this morning. I mean, I can't understand how we can go around thinking we know what's happening. They're just discovering new planets. They're finding black holes. It's a total mystery. Our reason makes it seem as if it's not. Well, I finally decided I am going to write a mystery, because I love mystery. It seems to me that mystery is what life is all about. And we're always trying to solve it. Us sitting here right now, we're trying to solve the mystery of life. And I thought, a mystery novel allows us to solve the mystery for a little bit, in a little way. It gives us that satisfaction of solving some part of the mystery of life. That's why I got into it. That's why I love it. That's why I've embraced it as deeply as I've embraced any of the other dreams that I've been in. So, clearly, I was dealing with what is deepest for me, the dream of the game board, the mystery of ancient artifacts, which I think carry with them a 2,000-year-old message. They want to speak to us, they're mysterious, and I think detectives are the most mysterious guys around. They stand in the shadows, they're part of the shadows. They watch buildings all day long. Jimmy McShane, my detective, learned about the architecture of New York because he was so bored standing in front of buildings all day waiting for people to come. He learns that's a French Gothic building, that's a French Renaissance building. He learns it just to pass the time. But he's also into the mystery of the building, into the mystery of Manhattan. That's what I like about mysteries.
Goodness. A lot of other books. This is another example, and I have this for a kind of twofold reason, because this is also a mystery of sorts.
Yes.
I mean, it's a lot of your books have mysterious elements to them. I mean, there's hidden things going on all the time. It seems as though there's kind of a thin line between reality and fantasy, or reality and
Yes.
whatever. And that in itself, that examination, is kind of a hint into that mystery as opposed to the traditional format. Really.
Yes. I think there is a very fine line between reality and fantasy. I think we're always on that fine line, and that poets, novelists of a certain kind, try to get right on the fine line and walk it just like a tightrope. In this book, that line is walked by the fact that we have Herr Nightingale, a hard-boiled German smuggler circa 1920, his beautiful paramour, the Satin Woman. But in the cafe where they're having supper is a piano player who happens to be a cricket. He's in a tuxedo and he plays the piano. He falls in love with the Satin Woman. She falls in love with him. They have a tragic love affair because they're separated by the boundary of the species, the ashes of misbegotten love, as the cricket says. More of the mystery.
The other reason I wanted to show those, I don't mean to short shrift that, but the other reason I wanted to show those was because both of the covers and the illustrations in this book, and so many of the other illustrations that you have throughout your books, are done by the same fellow, Joe Cervello, if I pronounce it right. How did you, it seems like you two are on the same wavelength.
Yes.
The styles vary from book to book, and how did you two happen to hook up? And
I saw him in the hallways of Penn State when I was there as an undergraduate. And he was in a leather jacket. I had no idea who he was, but he was glowing like the teddy bear in the safe. And I knew this guy was part of my life. I knew it as surely as I know we're sitting here. And I just made every effort to get to know him and find out what he was about. He was a young artist and he was starting out. We went to New York together after Penn State, and he said to me one day, "Why don't you write a children's book?" The fire bell came ringing for me. I wrote it. I said, "Joe, I've got the book." I ran over to his apartment. I said, "Here it is." He illustrated it. He carried the illustrations around with the book, and he got the book published. So when I saw him glowing that day at Penn State, I feel that what was glowing there were the 16 books that we've done together. It was all compressed in the central realm of the densely packed, the yet to happen. It was shining out of him. Had I not connected with him there, who knows?
yeah, the illustrations are absolutely delightful, and as I said, they're so different. This is the book that first called you to my attention, primarily because of the Sherlockian content to it, and then I just was fascinated with the detail in it and the research. I read somewhere that you spent something like a summer on your stomach looking at crickets and bugs to get an accurate picture of this.
Yes, it's very hard to get a cricket to come out of his little cage and show himself. He tends to be secretive. And I saw, finally, the cricket come out of his cave and start to play music. It was only after 2 months of lying on my stomach waiting for him to appear that I got to see his song. Another cricket came along, because this is a love song. Another male cricket was edging into the territory. And I saw what I doubt, something that I doubt few people have ever seen, including entomologists. The cricket who was singing shot out a toxic cloud, which I smelled, and the other cricket, as soon as it hit him, he turned around and got away from there. I felt I'd really gotten down into the cricket people and where they live.
Some real communication at that point and understanding, something very rare. As far as those insights, you have a lot of animals. Do you do the same kind of research for, there's a mole in here as well as a cricket, and the mantis in here, and Dr. Hopper and so on? Do you gather this kind of information? I mean, do you have this storehouse of information back at your house? And
well, I've got everything you need to know about bugs, should you be so desirous. When I need to know something, I start amassing a library. Private eyes, I've got all of the private eye manuals, and there are lots of them because it's now a very lucrative profession. I have books on lock picking. I can pick locks now. I can do a lot of peculiar things because I learn how to do them in order. I am an expert on New York architecture. I learned it in order for McShane to know it. So I have got a vast research library, yes.
changing direction once again, I wanted to ask you about your screenplays. Given all of these sort of fanciful things that you do, how did you end up doing the screenplay for one of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies? That seems like...
Yes, a peculiar departure. I knew the owner of the company because he directed Book of Love, which is the movie about my so-called life as a teenager.
That was based on Jack in the Box?
Jack in the Box, right. Yes. As a teenager, to impress a girl, I ate a Christmas tree ornament. She wasn't impressed. And we filmed this when I wrote the screenplay, and I was there the day they filmed it. They made an edible plastic ornament for the star who was playing me to eat, so he could do it and not get sick. He did it. We looked at it in the dailies the next day, and the director said, "We can't use it. Nobody would believe anybody would do something like that."
When you're going, wait, I did that.
Just what I did.
That's astounding. There was a book that I had noticed, read that you were working on called Manhattan High and Low.
Yeah.
Is that still something that's forthcoming?
Yeah, it is. It's Manhattan High and Low, Manhattan among the elite, Manhattan among the homeless. And it takes years to collect a really good collection like that because for me, the stories have to come calling after me. They can't, I just can't find any other way. I've got a book, 101 Plots and How to Use Them, but I've never been able to. So Manhattan High and Low is in the works. And then Jimmy McShane came along, and I found my detective in Manhattan because I knew a lot about it now. And he's high and low because there are very wealthy people in the Game of 30, and there are also people from another level of our culture.
And there are likely to be subsequent McShane novels?
You bet.
Has the reception been really quite good?
It's been wonderful.
Yeah, it's a very, very fascinating and fun book to read. Your wife is a novelist.
Yes.
And I wanted to find out how much of a kind of a collaboration you do, or critiquing of each other's works do you do? Do you find each other sort of getting out and bashing each other's writing a bit and getting it into shape?
Well, it got so bad one day when she was bashing my writing that I picked up a chair and was ready to throw it through the window. And I was stopped only by the fact that it was a rented house, and the woman who owned the house had hired a gardener to do her lawn, and I thought I might frighten the gardener away. I try to get my wife, Elizabeth Gundy, a wonderful novelist, to lie to me, to tell me that it's great, that it doesn't have to be rewritten. But she says to me, "I can't lie to you. How can I lie to you?" And so she always tears it apart. Of course she does, because we're all blind in a certain way. You just cannot help but be. I'm so lucky to have another novelist right down the hall from me. I get my chance on her, of course. When it's her book, I do the same thing.
That must be a great. Are you going to collaborate at any time, do you think?
Well, we're always collaborating, really. There's as much of her in the Game of 30 as there is of me, and that's not exaggerating by any means. Yeah.
Great. Okay, we're absolutely out of time. It's absolutely amazing. Thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank you, and watch the next A Discussion With. Thank you.
A presentation of the Hennepin County Library.